Well, I am glad you're here. You may not be able to tell, I'm from America. I have a Danish accent. It's very thick, so I hope you can understand me talking. But I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to be doing this. I'm going to tell you a true story. I started building this project that we're going to talk about today. Started building it last week on a whim on something we needed. And after we started looking at it, that would be really cool as a presentation. So the one I was going to do got swapped. So this will be the first time I've done this presentation. So you can tell me whether I did great or whether I didn't do great. We'll see, but I'm sure you'll tell me. So I'm sure you'll let me know. A couple rules while I'm talking, just so you know. Maybe not rules, but guidelines. They're going to help you out a lot, okay? The first one is this is any number I want it to be. Okay, when I talk and I tell stories and things like that, I'll hold this finger up and I'll say 7 or 12. And, I've gone into restaurants, say table for 7, and I find myself alone at the bar. So I do have one finger on each hand, it's the way I was born. I tell a lot of one-finger jokes while I'm talking and things like that. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'm totally okay with that. So we'll be good. The second rule is these are thumbs. You'll see me do this a lot. I'm not pointing at myself, unless, of course, I am. It's contextual. You have to figure it out. So there you go. And then these are quotes, not apostrophes. All right? I do this a lot. Like the other day I was working, and I swear, like people always in the back row, like, is he waving at us? I'm not waving at you, unless I am. So you have to figure it out. So I am glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about building a backend-less URL shortener. And backend-less can mean a lot of different things. So, we'll kind of talk through that. A little bit about who I am, just in case you don't know what I look like. There I am, in life size, large size there. My name is Eric Johnson. My Twitter handle you see there. I encourage you to follow me. However, I will warn you, while I do talk about serverless a lot, I also talk about pizza. I also talk about how pineapple shouldn't be on pizza. I talk about my family. I talk about all kinds of things. So it's a good with a bad, you choose. It's kind of funny. I can always tell when we get a good debate going on, you can tell whether it's good or not by the number of people following. They actually drop. So I am a senior developer advocate for serverless at AWS. I'm a serverless tooling automation geek. I love that kind of stuff. In my past life, I've been a software architect and a solutions architect. I'm a music lover. I was a drummer. I thought I was going to be a professional drummer. Turns out I'm a really good drummer for one finger, but I'm fairly average in the rest of the world, so nobody's going to pay me to do it. So I love pizza. It's very obvious. I love food in general. Pizza and Diet Dr. Pepper fanatic. So I haven't been able to find Dr. Pepper here, so I'm drinking a Coke today, but you know how that goes. So that's a little bit about me. So let's jump into it. We have a lot to cover today. I am going to be going fast. There's going to be a lot of live code. I'll set some expectations. There's probably going to be some mistakes, things like that, but we'll see how it goes. But let's jump in, and just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, then we'll jump into it. So when we talk about a standard application, we're going to be building basically a REST API application today. And when we talk about building a serverless web application on AWS, which is who I work for, that's the services we're going to be talking about today. This is basically what it would look like. First of all, obviously we start with the client. You have to have a client. And the first thing we have is we will host the site on AWS Amplify Console. Now, what this is kind of a cool system. This allows you to host your sites. I'm not going to go into all about it, but you can kind of see some of the things it does. But it provides a CI/CD, provides test and build automation. It connects to GitHub or code commit, supports stage level. It's powered by Amazon CloudFront, which allows you to distribute your code out to the edge. And it's powered by Amazon S3. So in a sense, what you're doing is you're hosting your website in an S3 bucket. If you're not familiar with S3, it's incredibly scalable, incredibly durable, so you can host your site there. A lot of people didn't know, hey, I can host a site right in S3. Yeah, I can. Amplify Console adds some more stuff to it by allowing you to do the CI/CD and stuff. So that's what we're going to use today to host our client. Okay, so for our backend's going to look a couple different ways. So we're talking about API management. We're going to use the API gateway. There's multiple different types of API gateways. There's different brands, different things like that. But at AWS, we have the API gateway as a product, and it's a managed API. And so it does a lot of things. And that's one of the things I want to point out today as I'm walking through the live code. An API gateway, his job is not just to take, hey, here's the request, do something with it. All right, let me send it back. There's a lot that can be done at the API gateway level. Things like authentication, authorization, throttling, caching, SSL offloading, custom domains, resource policies, request response modeling and validation, and more. There's a lot more that it can do. So when you think about building applications, specifically serverless applications, it's important to think about where can I handle different things? And a lot of times people skip right over API gateway. Go, I'm gonna have to do a Lambda, or I'm gonna have to do containers behind it, or I'm gonna have to spin up a box. But the funny thing is a lot can be done at API gateway. So when we talk about backend, usually when we're talking about a serverless backend, it'll have lambdas behind it. So your lambdas are where your compute function happens, right? Or your business logic. And so this isn't exactly how ours will be broken up, but you kind of get this idea that, I may add functions for different things, maybe domain specific or function or method or resource, different things like that. So you think about Lambda. If you don't know anything about Lambda, Lambda is a serverless compute architecture, and it allows you to run just your code without setting up an architecture. It supports multiple languages natively, like Ruby, Java, .NET, Node, Python, etc. You can also do custom runtime for languages. It auto-scales as you need it, so as you get more load, it gets bigger. Okay, as you use less load, it gets smaller. I don't think bigger and smaller are the right words, but it handles more capacity and less capacity. And you only pay for what you use. You only pay for the invokes. You never pay for a machine to be sitting out there waiting for your data. And finally, data storage. I'm choosing to use DynamoDB. DynamoDB it's a highly scalable key value store, highly durable, global. You can have global multi-master tables. If you're familiar in America with the Black Friday or Cyber Mondays, anybody familiar with that? You can raise your hand. Okay. On Amazon, this is what powers that. Okay, when you need really fast in and out, really high scalability, and your data durability is critical, that's where we head. Okay, one of the many, but this database is very, very much specific for it. The really cool thing is the global multi-master is you can have multi-master databases around the region, so around the globe. All right, for security, we're adding Amazon Cognito. And Amazon Cognito's job is we're going to use him for user pools. So he allows me to create users and passwords. You can also do federated identity. You can actually host your login pages. So if you don't want to write your whole login flow, you'll see it up here. I'm actually going to show you when I do that. And then you can do custom domains for the auth, and you can also do scopes. So that means you can say, hey, you're an admin, you're just a lowly developer advocate, whatever. So you can say, you can base who gets where based on these scopes. So this is kind of the whole picture of what a standard serverless application looks like if we're building a simple web client. And it's the idea behind a SPA client where you're running a single page application or a client server setup. And that could be something like, Angular, Vue, React, different things like that. Those would all be hosted. I'm going to use my fancy pointer again right here at AWS Amplify Console. Hey, I used my pointer. Did you guys see that? All right. I was telling them I probably wouldn't use it, but I did. All right. So here's the thing that we want to evaluate. When we're looking at this, there's a couple of questions we want to ask ourselves, okay? One is we think about the idea of transport and transform, okay? And my illustrious boss, his name is Ajay Nair. He's the director of serverless at AWS. He made the comment, he said, Lambda's functions should be used to transform, not transport. So the idea here is you should use Lambdas when you need to transform your data, when you need to do business logic. But if all your Lambda is doing is just passing data back and forth, then it might not be needed. Okay, so we ask our question, do we even need those? And for what we're doing, we might not. But you ask the question, say, okay, I've got business logic. Oh, my slide went too fast there. There we go. I gave it up. I gave away the party right there. I got business logic, and my business logic is handled at the Lambda, right? But what if I can move my business logic to the Amazon API gateway? Then what would happen is I can have an architecture that looks like this. So what does this get us? In this idea, now, Lambdas are fast, and they don't add a lot of latency. And they're also pretty cheap, right? So with the pricing on Lambda, you get your first 1,000,000 invokes free every month forever. It's not for just a year, it's forever. And you get 400 gig of storage. But if we don't need them, why use them? Okay, so today, over the next about 40 minutes, is we're going to walk through building an application that that actually is backend-less, okay, or function-less. And we're going to look at how do we move that business logic to API gateway, and how can we make use of some of the tooling and power that happens at API gateway. So, a couple things just to set expectations. First of all, this is a proof of concept, right? What you're going to see, you might go, I could do that better, and I guarantee you probably can. Okay, that better than maybe I do, or better than what I did, at 2 o'clock this morning, right? Not really, but that kind of, I did this pretty fast because it was like, this would be fun to show, right? It's happy path only. So you might ask yourself, well, what happens if that error is out? We can handle errors. I'm probably just not going to code it all in, just because we're trying to move pretty fast, okay? And just to say, this is not a move. I'm not against Lambda because I'm a developer advocate for serverless. I'm a huge fan of Lambda. But I want to say, if we don't need it, let's don't use it. There are other ways of doing things. When you walk out of here, I want you to have an understanding of the power of API Gateway in general. We're going to be talking about specifically AWS's API Gateway, but just, what can I offload to an API Gateway? And then gain an understanding of the right tools for the job. All right? And with that, let's code. All right, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to be talking through this. We're going to do some live code so you can kind of see what's going on. So, I'll be working in the Amazon AWS console. And can everybody see that okay? If you can't read that, can you raise your hand? A little bit smaller? Okay. All righty. Better? All right. I go any bigger, I'll have to stand back there to type. So, okay. So, here's what we're going to do. So, we've got this API. So, we're going to create, I'm sitting in the API Gateway console, and I'm not. I didn't even read that right. That was a bad start, folks. Really bad start. Okay, here we go. API, there we go. Let's reload that. Okay, so we're going to actually create a new API. This particular one's going to be a REST API. It's going to be a new API, and we're just going to call it Slip2. When we're all done, the product's called SlipLink. Okay, so it's a URL shortener. Okay, description, URL shortener, API. Now, I'm going to make this regional. I can do edge APIs as well. And an edge API means it's going to have a CDN in front of it. It's going to push all my stuff out. But we're just going to keep this regional. I'm building this up in Frankfurt, okay? So this is going to be a local one right now. I really could have gone either way. The reason I'm not doing edge is sometimes it takes the CDN a little bit to update, and that's not so great in live coding. So, because the worst thing you want to do is have me up here twiddling my thumbs. There it is. Because I don't have thumbs, right? That's right. Okay, so, all right. Let's do this. So, what you're looking at here is a very basic API. There's really not much to it. It's just saying, hey, here it is. And all I've got is one resource, and that's just the root, okay? So what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build our create so that we can actually create something to look at, okay? So we're going to do that we're going to create a resource because I want all of my stuff, all my admin stuff to work on a resource called links, okay? So everything's going to be behind the slip.link domain name. So I want them to go to slip.link/links to hit this, or the API. So I'm going to create this resource. Now, I don't care about proxying right now, and I don't care about cores. We'll handle cores. Who loves cores? Yo, you bunch of liars. Cores is hard. Nobody loves cores. Okay, I didn't mean to call you liars. Please don't take that out of my review. All righty. So we have links, okay? So then what we're going to do is we're going to actually create a method now, and that's going to be our post method, because what we're doing is we're going to post a new item. This is a basic REST API. You know, if you've dealt with REST, you have post, put, delete, update, different things like that. Now, normally I could go to a Lambda function. I could tell API Gateway, hey, whatever comes in, I'm going to go straight to a Lambda function. But instead, I'm going to choose AWS service. I have to choose a region, okay? And you're going to see this page several times today. And then I'm going to choose a service. And I'm actually going to connect directly to DynamoDB. DynamoDB has an API endpoint that I can hit and interact with, okay? So I'm going to tell it connect with that. Now, the magic of DynamoDB is everything is done as a post. So as my HTTP method to Dynamo, even though later when we do gets and deletes and things like that, I'm going to interact with Dynamo as a post. and I'm going to use an action name. And so the action name is the same thing as I would use like in an SDK or something like that, where I would say put item or delete item. And in this one, and I'll explain why, I'm going to use update item. And you may be asking yourself, wait a minute, you're updating something, but you haven't even created it yet. And yes, I do have a cheat sheet. I'm not embarrassed of that at all. You do not want to see me type all this stuff, because that would be, not fun. I'm grabbing the role. I'll explain the role here for a moment. This is the role that allows me to read and write to DynamoDB. Now, the reason I'm choosing update item is, in DynamoDB, if I'm just putting an item, I can't get that item back. I would love to tell you the reasons why. I don't know. But if I do a put item, it's not going to give me the new item back unless there was already an item there. But if I do an update item, then I get that data back. And because we don't want to have to make two calls. We don't want to put it and then check to see if it got there. We want it to do a round trip to give the data back. So I'm doing an update item, and it's going to do a round trip. It's going to get that data back, and then I can give it back to the client when we're done. All right? So what I've done here, now I've got four things. I've got a method request, I've got an integration request, and then I've got a method or integration response and a method response. And if you think about the way data flows through API Gateway, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to hit the method request first, it's going to hit the integration request, then it goes to the integration response, and back out to the method response. And if this is a little overwhelming, that's okay. I don't expect you to know everything about API going out there, but I want you to understand kind of what I'm doing. And I know I'm talking fast. So, all right, so now what we're going to do, we've created our integration service, and it has everything we just set up. So what we're going to do is data coming in, I'm going to make a data, in fact, I'll just show you real quick here. So all I have to do to put my data is something like this. Okay, so we're going to say, I'm just going to pass an ID of SD, so that's the URL short link, and then I'm going to pass a URL of HTTP, and this is my really outdated website that only my mom reads. So there you go. All right, now if I test that now, okay, we got a 200, but it's got some validation errors because the data going into DynamoDB isn't in the format that DynamoDB expects. Okay, so we have to transform that data. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to add what we call a mapping template. Okay, in the integration request, I'm going to add a mapping template. It's going to be in the format of application JSON. Save that. Now, you're going to see me not save that a couple times, and it's okay if I type something and move on, and you see it just yell out, save that, because I'll forget and then spend 10 minutes being really mad at all of you because I can't make this work. So help me remember to save stuff. All right, so right now our template is empty. So this is the template that's going to take the data. I'll just grab this real quick here, and I'll explain this in just a moment. So it's going to take the data coming in, and it's going to transform it to match what DynamoDB is looking at. So let's blow this up for a minute so you can see it. Okay? That big enough for everybody? Okay, good. All right, so first thing we're passing is we're telling it the table name. So I'm telling you, hey, here's the table name I want you to do. Then we're going to do a condition expression. We want to make sure that this ID doesn't already exist. So it has to pass this. So it says the attribute does not exist in its ID. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pass it its key. And DynamoDB likes to know the structure of everything. So the key is ID, and it's a string. That's what that S is. And then I'm grabbing the data being passed in through the body using the input.json here. The next thing I'm going to do are some expression attribute names and expression attribute values. I'll explain them real quick here so you can see as I see them later. Sometimes we have reserved words in DynamoDB or in the services. So in order to work around those, just in case I don't want to mess those up, like owner, that's one of the names of my fields, that's a reserved word. So I can map those to just variables. So expression attribute names maps those to variables. #u is URL, #ts is timestamp, so on. Expression attribute values does the same thing. It matches if I have to do long strings or some type of configuration to get the value, I can map those to a variable as well. And I'm doing :u, :ts, and :o. Now you'll notice that I've hard-coded my email address in there. That's on line number 15, I believe. There's a reason for that. this is going to be part of our security, okay? And you're thinking, wow, that's lousy security of hard coding your email in. We're going to go change that a little bit, but for now, so this works, I'm going to show you. Later, we'll dynamically grab that when we have add authorization. But we want to make it so that only I can interact with my stuff. So it's going to use my email as my identifier. All right, so let's save that. Okay, so if we go back and we test that again, okay, I still got the same data here. Let's see what we got. So this time, we got a 200, and we've got some data back. It's not pretty data, but we got data back, right? So we've just written to the DynamoDB table. And I can pop over here to DynamoDB, and you can see it right here. There you go. So I have one record in there. We're good to go. We could call it a win today. But this isn't the way we want to send our data back. We could, but it's not a real pretty way. This is how DynamoDB looks at data. So that's okay. We can change that as well. So a couple things we need to do, okay? And first thing we're going to do, in our method response, we need to make sure that we have an HTTP status of 200, okay? We also need to add a header. Now, this is where you manage the headers that are available to here. And again, for those of you who love cores, on our account, we need to pass back the access origin. I always get this wrong. I think it's control allow origin. There we go. Allow origin. Okay. Now notice I'm not setting a value for it. All I'm doing here is saying this is a header that I'm going to need. Okay. This is just in the method response. Okay. So I'm going to go back out of here, and I'm going to go into my integration response. And this is where I interact with the backend service that I'm using. At the integration response, I get data, and I can map and configure that, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. First thing is I'm going to go ahead and set that header mapping that I just made. I'm going to give it a value, okay? Now, I could put in here whatever website we were going to use. For now, we'll just use the star. Don't judge me. It just makes it quick for us to be able to do this. So what you could actually come in and say, look, this is the domain that you should be able to reach from, series of domains. Okay? The last thing we're going to do here is we're going to add a mapping template. Okay? So this mapping template, instead of formatting the data on how DynamoDB should do it, it takes what DynamoDB puts out and formats it in a way that our client should get it. So let me just walk you through that real quick. So first thing we're doing is we're setting a variable input route that grabs all our data off the input path, okay? Then we're going to check it, okay? So we want to check and see if DynamoDB kicked it out and said, nope, there was a condition issue here. You already had this ID, okay? So if you look at this, it says, check. I convert that to a string, and I say, does it contain the string conditional check failed exception? If it does, then we're going to error out, and we're going to say error true and do a message link ID already exists. We're still going to kick it back as a 200 to our user. It worked. Everything went okay. It just didn't work. You could do it as a 400 too. This is really kind of a preferential on how you want to do it. But right now, I'm going to kick it out as a 200. If it doesn't match that, if it actually passes, then we're going to format our data as the ID, URL, timestamp, and owner. So let me save this. Let's go back to our test. Okay. Now I'm going to test this. What do you guys think you'll see? Anybody know? Because the ID already exists. There it is. So now we know, hey, there's our validation. We can't double that up. So let's change that ID real quick here. We'll call it SD1. Test that, and there you go. So I can now send that back to my user, and that's what's happening. If you were to hit this from outside, it would go all the way back, right? Except for we have to set up the options and the pre-flight and all that, and we'll take care of that in a little bit. All right, so now that we're able to post data, so one of the first things we want to do is you can look in here. There's our two pieces of data. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to redirect based on a call. So we're building a URL shortener, right? So they should be able to hit our domain, pass the short link, and get redirected, okay? So this is a little different. We're not going to actually do a response. We want to send back a location header. So let's build that out real quick. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to build this in its own area. So right off the root, we're going to add another resource, and that resource is going to be bracket link ID in bracket. Now notice it API Gateway tries to be smart and say, oh, you can't use those characters. I actually want that, so I'm going to retype this real quick here. Not worried about proxy or cores right now. Now, what this says is that's going to be a parameter on my string. So anything on the root with the parameter it doesn't recognize, like links, then this is where it goes. It's kind of a greedy. It's not terribly greedy because it won't extend past that, but just this one parameter. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Now we have to add a method on this, and on this we're going to do a get because that's all we're doing. People are just hitting it with the browser, so it's going to be a simple get. All right. So we'll create a method, and we're going to go get here, and we're going to save that. And now I'm going to go kind of quick through this because we kind of already talked about this. All right. And for those of you saying, man, do I have to do this in the dashboard the whole time? No, you don't. Actually, and all these changes you're seeing are the same. I do a post. I'll go back to explain that in a minute. Let me tell you what I'm going to do here. So for the action name here, I'm going to do get item. I'm not doing a query because I have the ID, and the way DynamoDB works is if you have that ID, it knows where it's going to be stored. It can go right to it. That's a reason it's really quick. Okay, so this is the hash and memory that it can grab that. Now, one thing I need is the role. Now, on this one, I have two roles that I've got. I've got one that I just used earlier, that allows create, read, update, and delete, so a standard CRUD. And this role only allows reading. So I'm doing least privileges on this. So it's saying this can invoke DynamoDB, but only in a read capacity. Now, earlier I was saying, do we have to do everything through the console? No. You can build this, and if we have time, I'll show you right at the end. You can build this with the SAM template or a CloudFormation template. I have a template that builds this all out for us, okay? But I don't want to walk you through the whole template. Does everybody follow that? It's quite complex. So, all right, so now that we've got that, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to add our integration request. So we're going to do a map, okay? Again, same pattern as we saw before, and I'll explain the template here. That thing popping up says, hey, when should I pass it on to the proxy behind it? And I'm telling it, if there's no template that matches it, so if I don't have an application JSON, pass it, that's fine. I can do never also. So that's just a security measure that pops up. All right, so in this one, this is actually a pretty simple template, okay? All it does is it says, here's the table name, and here's the string, or here's the hash that was passed in. So find this and return it. Okay, so we save that. Okay, so if we look at this real quick here, and let's test that and see what we get. So we know we have a string, so we're going to pass in this path ID of SD, and it can emulate that. So we hit test, and there's the body. Okay, it was that quick. Now again, we need to format that body in a way that it's going to be usable. But notice we got a status 200. That's not going to work for us if we want to do a redirect. Okay, if we want to do a redirect, we need to do a 301 or a 302, and we need to pass a location header. Make sense? So what we can do here, we're going to go back into our response here. Okay, under the method response, I'm going to get rid of the 200. That's not the one I want to use. I want my default instead to be a 302. Okay, now I do need a header. Okay. So my header that I'm worried about is location, okay? Alrighty. So now we've got that. Now I can go back over to my integration response. I'm going to kill my 200 here as well. It defaults to 200. It tries to, hey, here's what we're going to do. All right? And I'm going to add an integration, and I'm going to map a 200 to a 302. Okay, so what that's saying is even though the backend service is giving me a 200, I want you to send a 302 to the user. Okay, so this is how you can kind of control how that goes through. So let's save that out real quick, and then we need to deal with our headers. So the way we're going to deal with our headers is this. Hang on just a moment here. First thing is we're going to give it a default value of a header. Okay, this is the location that I want you to respond to. And that's going to be https://slip.link, and that's it. Okay, and maybe we'll pass a tag, no link found. Okay, so like that. So that header says, look, if we don't do any modifications, this is what I want you to do. So it's kind of the catch-all. If there's an error in this, I want you to save that back. Now I need to save that. Remember, sometimes I forget to save it. So the second thing we're going to do is we're going to add another mapping template. grab that template real quick here. Now this doesn't look like JSON at all. Now this is VTL. Now really all the templates we're doing are VTL. That stands for Velocity Templating Language. Apache came out with it. It's very, it can be complex a little bit, but it's very powerful. Now here's what we're doing in this one, just so you can see it. Blow it up. All right, so, nope, that was the wrong way. There we go. All right, so what we're doing, first of all, we're setting the input root, so we get a variable. Then we're checking again, we're converting it to a string so we can check it and see if it exists. So I'm looking for item. And if I get item, I know I got something back, okay? I can go in a little further if I want to, but that works for our purposes. So if that's the case, then I'm going to override the header location with the value from that item, from the URL on that item, okay? All right, so, and then I end that. So let's save this. Let me back that down a little bit. Okay. So now let's test SD and see what we got. Test. All right, so no data because we didn't send any data back, right? But look in the header. Location header is our redirect. Okay, so let's publish this and see if it actually works. Okay, so anytime you make changes to an API gateway, you have to deploy it, and you need to deploy it to a stage, which I will do so right here. Okay, I can't tell you how many times I have said, oh, my changes aren't showing, and I get mad at the world, and I realize I just haven't deployed it. Okay, so this is a root, even though it says prod, this is the root of our API. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go /SD. Let's see if it works. There you go, there's my website. All right, that quick. That was pretty quick, huh? Yeah, I know in your head you guys are shy, but I know everyone you're going, that was quick. All right, that was like a 7. All right, moving on. Okay, so we have so what have we done? We've done our create and we've done our redirect. So if nothing else, we could walk out here and go, I think I can finish that. That makes sense. But we're going to finish it. Don't worry. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build out our the other two, our update and delete. That's all we'll need here. Okay, so we go back to our resources. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to add something called read all links so that our users can grab that. So that's going to be off our let's see, resource links here right quick, and we're going to do another get. Okay. So we're going to create the method. This is going to be a get. We don't have to do a lot with cores here because it is a get. Let me build out the service real quick here. Central and DB. All right. So this time we're going to again you do a post as the method to DynamoDB, but we're going to do a query. Okay. So in this one we're going to query, and we're actually going to query a secondary index. Okay, I added a secondary index. A secondary index allows us to index on a secondary item. You know, it's in the name. But it gives us a lot of power to index stuff. So what I want to be able to do is I created a secondary index on the owner. So I want to be able to find all links that belong to me. Okay, so going back to when I hard-coded my email in, you can kind of see I'm going to look for everything that belongs to me. All right, so I've built that out. So the map we're going to add an integration request here. And go to mapping templates. All righty, save that. Yes, so we're going to grab this. Make sure I have the right one. This is the read all links. This isn't a huge one, but there's some work that's being done in it. So let me show it to you real quick. All right, so what this means is this one's going to take, and it's going to get past the table name again, and it passes the index name. Here's the table I want you to look at. Here's the index I want you to look at. And here's the expression. The owner, remember I'm using those variables that we learned about earlier. The owner must equal the owner. So the owner coming in must equal the owner listed here. Right now I've got the name hard-coded in here. Eric T. Johnson at Amazon is hard-coded in there. Later time allowing, we will swap that out. Okay, so that's how that works. And then let's save this. Okay, and let's actually test this real quick. All right, let's close this out and make it easier. All right. Okay, so if I do a test on this, there really isn't much going on. Let's see what we get. There it is. There's all my data. It's 200. Again, it's not in a format we want to use. So real quick, we'll take and we'll modify that. Let me grab that string. So this one has a loop in it. So it does a for each to kind of format the language. So we're going to pop that in here and add it. Application. Alrighty. So you can see here where I'm looping through. I set the variable, and then I loop through, and I set the data. It looks much like the one where we grabbed it before. Go back to test, and there it is. So we've got our data coming out. All right, so we can now, we can create. We can get the one for a redirect. We can read all of them. Let's add update and delete real quick. Okay, so we're going to add another resource because update and delete you'll actually pass in the header, you'll pass the ID. Okay, we'll also pass it in the body, but it allows us a little more security. So we're going to create a resource, and again, we're just going to keep it real simple. We're still going to use link ID. Okay, so both times I'm just passing a link ID as a parameter that'll get replaced in my path. So, all right. So in here, we're going to add a method, or I'm sorry, we've added a method. We're going to add a resource. Let's add we're going to do the update next. So, no, it's not a resource. It's a method, my bad. Okay. All right, so we're going to do a update, which is a put. Save this. Do this real quick. EU Central, DynamoDB. And if you look as I'm talking, each time I do that, you'll notice there's a huge amount of services that that DynamoDB will automatically integrate with. So good to know. So we're going to do, again here, we're going to do an update item. Okay? So this is actually a legit update item. So let's grab that role here because we want to do the CRUD role. So it's this one. Okay. This pass-through here, all that's saying is if I have binary or things like that, I can't handle binary, I can transform those as I need to. All right, so now we need our mapping template. Now, one of the things that we talk about when we're doing business logic is security and making sure that only the right person can do what we're looking at. And we looked at that a little bit on some of the templates, and I want to continue on that. So let me go to my update one. This one's probably one of the more complex ones. In this one, we are going to blow it up so you can see it real quick. Set the table name. The condition expression, it's going to check. DB is the ID coming back from the database, and PI is the ID in the path. Same here. BI is the ID in the body. So I'm checking what they're passing on the path, what's coming in on the body, and what's in the database to make sure that ID matches. Probably a little overkill, but just to kind of show you how it can be done. And then also the owner has to match, okay, before I can do this work. Okay, and then if that's the case, then I'll add in the data, grabbing the path link ID, and then hard coding that. Then I'm returning the whole set to me so that I can update that. Really, all I'm doing is updating the URL because that's all you can update in our linker on this one for now. So we'll save that. All right. Okay, so in this, we're actually going to add a couple responses here. In our method response, we need 200, and we've got to add our header. Because again, anytime we're doing anything past a get, it's going to require that we add the control or the headers on the function coming back. Even though you may have cores set up, it still requires this, or the pre-flight. All right, so let's copy this real quick. Okay, so we're going to do that. All righty. We're also going to do a 400 on this one. Okay, so I jumped out there. So we're going to have another response, and it's going to be 400. Again, what I'm doing here is saying these are the possible responses I can have, and on those responses, these are the possible headers that can exist in there. And finally, we go to the integration response here, and we're going to say on the 200, so we've got a couple that we're going to add here. Okay, so in our header mapping, we're just going to set the access control, again, like we said. We're going to set this so that anything can hit it. Want to tighten that down when you know your domain name. And then our path here. Grab the path real quick. All right. There it is. Okay, so we're going to add the application. Okay, this one, real simple, okay? We know what's happening. We're just going to pass, since everything's good, this is a 200, we're going to respond with the right answer, okay? So we know we entered that, and now we're going to respond back with the data formatted, okay? However, now we need to add another integration, and we're going to say this is going to be a 400, okay? And save that, and we go, again, we're going to grab our text here. And all this is going to do is say, hey, yep, you're not authorized if this went through. So let me go real quick here. We got to, again, access control. We got to add our value. Save it. And template map. Okay. JSON. And finally here. All right. So there you go. Error true, not authorized. That can pop back depending. So let's go back and see what we've got. So this is the update. So we're going to test this. So we know we have a value out there called SD, and we're going to pass in the body, okay? And we're going to say SD, and we're going to say, again, I'm sorry, this should be ID. ID should be SD, and then finally URL should be same thing, we'll just do this, .com. I don't care. So that's what we're going to update it to. Boy, that almost looks like I'm trying to say something bad. Let's change that out. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I apologize. All right, so let's test this, see what happens. Okay, we got a 200, and we got the updated data back, right? That's good. Now, my URL's not looking too good. That'll break. Just for giggles, let's pass in a new path value, okay? So SD5, but it's SD here. Let's test that, okay? Error true, not authenticated, okay? I can do other errors. I can do some more logic to figure that out. You see how I'm doing the logic right in the template? And I'm able to kick back 400s. I'm able to kick back 200s, whatever we need. All right. So real fast, I'm going to add one more integration, and then we'll add some security around it and see it work. Okay. So the last thing we're going to add is our delete function. Okay. I almost deleted the method. So, yeah. Y'all watching me? Let's just delete the whole thing. Okay. All right. So we're going to add a method. All righty. We're going to say delete. And, all right. That was just to test, see if you guys were awake. All righty. I've chosen now to have some type of allergy attack as well, so you're welcome. I like to have a mic when I sniff a lot. All right. So now this one we're going to do, it's a simple delete item. Okay. We need the CRUD role because we're doing more than just reading. So let's get the full role here. I really should memorize this, but it's, long. So, all right, let's add that in. Okay. All right. Integration response here. Let's grab that real quick here. Again, template. So in this template, and I won't take too long to explain it just because time-wise, but this template has validation in it also, basically just to say, are you the user and are you allowed to delete it? And pretty much, and it's checking the user from, while we have it hard-coded in here, it's actually checking the user from the login authentication. So when we log into our app, your authentication, we may not get time to show it today, but your authentication is actually passed into the application. So using a variable, you can actually grab that authentication. So I could say, whatever was written, does that match? And they can't change it because that happens after the fact. That's part of the login system. All right? So what this guy's going to do is he's going to say, hey, here's the ID to delete and verify that it's the owner. So we can save that. All right? And then as far as the responses, I'm not going to worry about sending. All I care about is sending a 200 and a 400. Okay? So now I do need to have the whole access allow. So we're going to add a header to this. So access I really should get this to where I copy and paste it, right? Probably all our time was taken to me typing this origin. Okay, let me copy it. So we're going to need it again. Alrighty, so let's add a 400. And you can add 500s, and there's all kinds of different ones you can add here as you need them. Okay. Now you may be asking yourself, why do you add the header there, but you have to add the response over here? The reason is, because this is where you get, or this is where the data is integrated. So you might want to get data from your backend to set these settings. So that's why you set the value of it here. But right now, I'm just hard coding a value, and I don't need to put anything there, because I'm just going to pass the 200 or 400 based on if it works or not. But I can do a value from the integration behind it, so I don't have to worry about that. So let's set the value here of the header. And okay. All right, so that is all together. We can now delete. So let's go in here and we'll test that. And I think we had an SD here. Let's go ahead and delete that one. Okay. And we have a 200, and that's what we kick back. And that's how it would work. All right, so we're going to book it here. We've got a few more things I want to show you guys. So the first thing is, now what we did is we got everything kind of there, but now we need to change that out so that actually our authentication works, okay? You're thinking, okay, how does authentication work at API gateway level? Well, we have this thing called an authorizer, okay? So we're going to create a new authorizer, and this is going to be a cognito authorizer, and we're going to call it, real quick here, make sure I get the right one, user authorizer. Now what this is going to do is when I spelling's important, and I know Z might not be right here, but it's what I got, okay? I'm connecting it to a user pool that I've already created. Authorization. Okay. Alrighty. And I'm going to create that. So now what this is an authorizer that allows me to use on all my resources to have it verified to get the data. So in order for me to get links on this, I don't want this one anybody can do because that's our redirector. But this one, we want it to actually authorize using, sometimes, it's a little fun part of this, because of caching, you have to do a refresh on that to get it to show up. So we're going to say, user authorizer, save, post here. We're going to say, same here. User authorizer, save. And we're going to do it on all 4 of these so we can see it. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so that is done. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is real quick here. We're going to swap out that owner that we talked about, because I want you guys to see this actually working and not me just making it up. We might go a little bit over, but I'll try not to go too far over. Okay, so right here in this application JSON, we've got this owner hard-coded. But what we really want is, let's see here, $context. So this is the context that's passed in from the API. And then the authorizer. So this is the authorizer that we just created. And we're going to do the claims that they offer, and then we want their email. Okay? So that is how we're going to grab the owner as it comes in. Okay, we're going to save this. Now we got a couple more places we need to update that real quick. Application JSON. Right here. Okay. And the delete. You're thinking, man, this guy has one finger and he types like a bad boy. Is anybody thinking that right now? If one person says yes, that would be awesome. Alrighty. I expect the room host to help me out, but that's not happening. Just kidding, man. I love you. You guys are awesome. All right, so there we go. So one other thing we need to do for this to work, well, a couple things. We need to have cores working. All right. In order for cores to working, we can do a real quick thing. Now that everything's built out and it can analyze it, I'm going to tell it enable cores. And it says, all right, look, you've got a post to get and some options. Let's add all that in. Let's add your access allow. So we're going to cruise to that. We're going to place this real quick. And then we're going to do the same here. And we're going to enable cores. Okay. We're going to cruise through all that. All righty. And did I do that? No, here we go. Okay. Yes. All righty. All right, so now we have cores going, all right? So the last thing we're going to do is kind of fun. I have a custom domain name already set up. Right now it's pointing at my old domain, so we're going to change it out. It's called api.slip.link. We're going to change this so that it's pointing at our new one that I just created. So it's slip2, pointing at this prod stage and the path of this, okay? We hit save, all right? So now we have a domain called api.slip.link in front of it. Let's check our records real quick, see if I have any to work with here. SD1. All right, so I should be able to go to slip.link. Nope. API. I need to do HTTPS here, and I'll explain that in a second. I'm going to do slip.link. Eric cannot type under pressure. api.slip.link. And then /SD1. And let's see if this redirects. And it does. Okay, so we now have a full one working. So what I'm able to do now, I actually have, let's see if this is working. All right, so we're going to do a new one. Now this, we're going to do, let's go AWS. Let's see here, aws.com/Sam. Now we'll just do AWS, okay? Let's see if I can create that. Alrighty, so bad format. Alrighty, so one thing I've got, I'll have to go back to the API and make sure it's switched over and we are out of time. But that's all right, this is kind of the extra. So what I did here is I created a full interactive application. That you're seeing is a front end to it. Give me about another minute and I'll get it working. Maybe I'll do it after the fact if you want to see it. But any questions on this? Did you know you could do this with the API? And are there any questions on what you saw and how can you make it work? I'm glad to answer any questions.